Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, Cedi depreciation to slow down this week as demand pressure subsides. $1 going for 16 cedis, 28 pesos. Also coming up, some local manufacturers express concern about the impact of black market activities on the city's performance and are calling on the Bank of Ghana to intervene.
One that affects business a lot is the depreciation of the cedi. And we feel strongly that government needs to be able to do something about it, particularly Bank of Ghana.
And the Africa Center for Entrepreneurship and Youth Empowerment makes a strong case for government to cut by half the tax burden on small and medium-scale enterprises.
Government should cut down on, taxes
for SMEs.
Because, it's very difficult. The first 5 years as a survival stage.
My name is Darryl Kwao. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. The city recorded one of its first appreciations against the dollar for this year in the month of August. Now, this is based on data picked up from banks on the city's performance in terms of trading and rates offered to retail clients. Here's George Jaffe with more.
In May this year, the city's rate of depreciation against the dollar stood at more than 7%. It slowed to 4% in June and around 1.9% in July this year. However, the city posted an appreciation, although it can be described as marginal, as the data showed that it went up by 0.16%. There are several factors that are linked to this development in August. One can talk about the improved dollar supply coming from the Bank of Ghana, the dollar weakening in value on the international market. These numbers are just based on how the city performed in each month of this year. However, the picture doesn't look that good when you track its performance from the beginning of this year to now, as the data showed that the year-to-date depreciation is pegged at 24.41%. The banks, on the other hand, are worried about the city's fortunes going forward. This is because they are expecting the dollar demand to pick up strongly as some firms and individuals try to restock for the Christmas holidays and festivities.
Well, meantime, some local manufacturers have expressed concern about the impact of the black market activities on the city's performance and are calling on the Bank of Ghana to intervene. They're worried about how the operators rather sell dollars to persons who have no present need, fueling shortage in the system. Speaking to journalists, Managing Director of Intravenous Infusion, Swalihu Mukhtar, suggested that the forex bureaus are part of the reasons the local currency is struggling.
What I also like to add here is that in all the indicators that we have, I think one that affects business a lot is the depreciation of the cedi. And we feel strongly that government needs to be able to do something about it, particularly Bank of Ghana, because they are mandated by the law to regulate the forex markets. And from our perspective as businesses, if you look at the trade balance of this country over the last 5 years, it has seen some improvement. So our expectation is that this improvement should have translated to stability of our cedi. But we are not getting it. So the question that you ask yourself, why are we not getting that stability? In spite of all the interventions Bank of Ghana and the government is making. It means that the supervisory role needs to be strengthened by the BOG. Because where we have people holding excess cedis, and then the cedi is depreciation against these currencies, the tendency for people to convert the local currency into the foreign currency as a store of value is very, very high. And sometimes some of these people don't do it in the conventional way. They get these things converted through the forex bureaus who are not properly regulated, and also through the black market system, and creating an artificial shortages and bringing about the increase in the, the value of the dollar, and then the decline of the cedi. So clearly, from where we sit, we think that the regulatory environment need to be looked at by BOG once again. And we think that people who do not involve in importation and exportation do not have any reason why they should be holding dollars in Ghana, either by way of having them in their bank accounts or keeping them in their houses. There's no basis for that.
Or join us on Zoom, Dennis Brown, Senior Manager Financial Advisory at Deloitte. Good afternoon to you. So according to data we are picking from the banks, the cedi appreciated against the dollar for the first time this year in the month of August. Although very marginal, we have also seen the rate of depreciation slow down recently. Is there room for optimism?
Hi, good afternoon, Darrell, and thanks for having me. I think that, yes, we've seen the cedi appreciate against the dollar more recently. I think this comes off the back of the stability or relative stability we've seen in the second quarter. We saw that in the budget statement from the minister as well, that we've seen some relative stability, and therefore there's a further improvement where we are actually seeing appreciation of the cedi against the dollar. Asking whether there's room for optimism, yeah, I'd say yes, but not much, because we're also looking ahead into the last quarter of the year, where we know that the pressure really will start mounting on the cedi because of the festivities associated with the Christmas or the end of year, festivities. So you have individuals and businesses that will be rushing in for these dollars, and that will put some pressure, and that might see, the cedi again depreciating, against the dollar. But this is quite cyclical. That's what happens normally towards the end of the year. So whilst there is room for some optimism, I doubt this appreciation can be sustained deeply into the last quarter. We are likely to see from November, another round of pressure on the cedi.
Well, how significant will this impact be? I mean, you talk about the Christmas festivities approaching. This is the last quarter of the year. And then the government has had to start thinking about importing food as a result of the dry spell in the northern part of the country. How significant would that hit the cedi?
Of course. I mean, typically, like I mentioned, towards the end of the year, we see the pressure at its highest point, right, because of the festivities associated with the end of the year. Now, if you take into account the fact that there's a looming food crisis and the government is trying to do something about it, and it looks like the immediate feasible solution is to import food, we would have to question how they are structuring that. Is it the case that there will be immediate outflow of FX to import the food? That means that the impact in terms of the pressure on the cedi is likely to be immediate. If it's the case that we are getting the supplies on credit basis, then we are likely to have the impact, deferred till later. It might be after the end of the year when we are now actually making payment for those credit supplies. If it's the case that we are also, getting a loan for that purpose, payment of that loan might come later. It might be a way of, deflecting the impact on the cedi till later. So, I mean, however you look at it, either the impact is immediate or is deferred till later, it's going to have an adverse impact on the cedi in terms of the depreciation, and it's going to be notable.
Yeah, we've had some economists criticize government's policy of trying to import food to deal with the crisis that is looming, saying that the government did not really examine this policy well. I don't know how that is an issue, because nobody anticipated the drought or a dry spell. What do you have to say to those concerns?
Well, I think that we can question whether government have indeed planned well, and whether they've been in the know in terms of the potential food crisis that we are facing, right? I mean, I'd like to imagine that government should have the structures and institutions to be able to predict in a fairly long time when some of these things are about to happen. And if that is the case, then we would expect that we wouldn't really be here where we are basically firefighting. But if it's the case that, it's through some type of natural phenomenon where, it's basically impossible to predict, and it visits you when it has to visit you, then the government would have to respond. It's better to try and resolve what could be, a food crisis at the expense of the depreciation of the local currency, rather than try to protect the depreciation or protect the local currency from depreciation and have the food crisis play out. In any case, if the food crisis happens, it will create the same thing. It will lead to the same thing because the private sector persons seeing the demand will still, go out there and import food to come and serve the market, and that will still put pressure on the city. So, government doing it now, if it's indeed under a recognized emergency, that for me, it's probably the only feasible solution at this point in time in terms of preventing the food crisis.
All right, Dennis, you'd have to adjust your device a bit. We're losing a bit of your face there. And so I want to ask you next about the black market activities, because we heard from some local manufacturing firms who say, well, that is having an impact on the city, and they're asking the Bank of Ghana to intervene. Again, on this matter, we've seen the central bank try to intervene to sort of check these black market activities. What more can they do?
Yeah, it's actually, please confirm if you can hear me now.
I can hear you.
Okay, it's actually a very challenging issue to deal with because of the way these black market operators, work. They operate seamlessly behind the scene. I mean, it could be that guy that you saw at the airport that passes by and asks you whether you want dollars or, they have CDs if you have dollars. I mean, they don't have recognized spots, like in shops and outlets where you go there and then, do your business. So it's very difficult to track them and target them for any kind of policy measure. For me, I look at it in this way, that the market has presented an opportunity for them because perennially there are shortages in the market and they are feeding into a particular space, although you can describe their activities as unapproved, right? If we want to deal with it effectively, we have to resort to measures that would dislodge them from the market. We have to try and put in measures to make their activities unattractive to them and also to the consumer. For instance, if the customer finds it extremely risky to go for dollar notes from these people because those dollar notes may end up being unacceptable into the main system, then it will cut down the demand. But for now, if you look at their cost structure, they have a very low cost structure. They don't operate anything where they are paying rent and incurring all these costs that established banks and forex bureaus do incur, and have to add some margin on the exchange rate. So they are able to offer far better exchange rate, and it creates the traction for them, the demand for them, because you can get a lower rate from them. So you're already dealing with that side of things where it's a win-win situation for the customer and the supplier in the black market. And so it's very lucrative. The only way you can deal with that is to try and introduce something in the market that will make their operations costly to them and unattractive to the customers. Bank of Ghana would have to think through that. I don't believe in physical interventions like, trying to identify where they operate, clamping down, arresting them and all that, because the cost will be dire and the benefits thereof is going to be, very marginal. It's not going to compensate for the cost because of the way these guys operate. They have also managed to build a network where you can pick a phone and call somebody. I need somebody in a black market to give me dollars. They'll tell you. So it's not easy to identify them, but they'll still operate. If you resort to any physical intervention, I don't think it's going to yield the results. I think we need to look at measures that will, dislodge the activities from the market, right? Let the market itself speak that and inform them that your activity is not attractive anymore, and they'll begin to withdraw. And that's for Bank of Ghana to think of.
What's your outlook for the rest of the year? We're in the last quarter. And if you're managing the economy based on the factors to do with the approaching festive season and the fact that you have to deal with a food crisis, what would you be doing to control or to sort of put the currency at a very stable place?
I mean, we've always said that in the long term, what we want is to have an economy that adds on more to our foreign exchange reserve than takes out. And this has to come through our import substitution policies, export drive, being able to whip up the productive segment of the economy to be able to, put products out there beyond the borders of this country and generate the needed effects. But that's for long term, and it has to be a coordinated approach. But within the short term, Bank of Ghana would have to streamline the approach to, supplying the needed FX to those that demand it. We would have to find a way to cut down on speculative demand as well. And we would have to find a way to incentivize private sector because they are big players here. You have foreign investors that are evacuating their foreign earnings from the country. And our foreign exchange regime it's not that stringent. It doesn't prevent anyone from evacuating their FX earnings. And so the way to deal with it is to incentivize them to try and hold it up here for much longer, also to invest or reinvest some of these earnings back into the economy to boost our foreign exchange reserve. Those are some of the short-term measures that we can take to sustain the relative stability we are seeing maybe from now through to the end of December. But the risk still persists, particularly relating to December and the rush for the FX in December.
All right, Dennis Brown, Senior Manager, Financial Advisory, Deloitte. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your analysis. Well, so quality of petroleum products remains the major priority for consumers rather than just pricing. That's according to the latest survey by the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Now, the development is coming at a time that price has been identified as a major push for one of the fastest growing firms in the industry, Star Oil. Executive Secretary Duncan Amwa tells Joy Business there are still some consumers out there who will not be moved by pricing.
If you check even other OMCs whose prices, as I speak with you, may be lower than Star Oil and Goil, a lot more Ghanaians would continue to shy away from some of the OMC brands because of the perception that they wouldn't probably get the right quality and their engines may be at a certain risk. But the number one concern as far as the consumer preference in Ghana is concerned is almost always been about the right quality, being served them. But when you move from that right quality parameter, you are also dealing with, they would now look at as the right prices or what is fair. And then the third most essential parameter being the right quantity.
But Duncan, I was speaking on Business Live yesterday. That takes us to the exchange. We're going to deal with competition issues. We want to bring in Apia Kusiadima, who is Regional Director of CAS International. Good afternoon to you. So competition is good. But based on COPEX findings, consumers are not willing to compromise on quality. Your thoughts? You're muted.
Okay. Good afternoon, and your viewers on Joy. I think consumers, as my brother Duncan said, want quality of the products, not necessarily the cheaper prices. Now that competition is driving prices down, some OMCs may decide to temper with the volume or the quality so that they can sell below the market price and remain in business. Because of this, I think that the regulator, that is the National Petroleum Authority and also the Ghana Standard Authority, the NPA is responsible for looking at the quality of the product, whereas the Ghana Standard Authority is also responsible for ensuring that the volume that are delivered match up to what the consumers are paying for. And so, whilst competition is good, at this time, if care is not taken, the competition may not work in the interest of the consumer. For consumers to be able to benefit from the competition in this market, what is required is that the regulators need to be doing in terms of ensuring that the OMCs are delivering on the exact volume and that they're also delivering on the right quality of the product. Without this, I think that the consumers will be worse off in this market. I want to urge the Ghana Standard Authority to also ensure that they do the regular monitoring of these shops. And for consumers, we also know that per the law, every OMC is required to have the 10-liter can. So whenever you go to any filling station and you want to be sure that they are delivering the volume that you are buying, you can ask them to bring their 10-liter can where they can dispense the fuel up to the 10-liter. So once you look at the volumetric reading to see that the machine gets to 10 liters, also check whether the 10 liters as they delivered is able to get to the 10 liter level of the can. And if it is not up to 10 liters, what you can do two things. One, you can call NPA on their hotline, and also you can also leave the station because they are not delivering the right volume.
All right, another competition story we are following is that of Virgin Atlantic announcing that they are returning to the London-Accra-London route. That's breaking some monopoly enjoyed by British Airways, no?
Yes. I mean, getting Virgin Atlantic coming back to Ghana again after 11 years of exiting the market on Accra London route is going to challenge the dominance or the monopoly of the British Airways. And let me say that one of the reasons why last time Virgin Atlantic left Accra London route was that Virgin Atlantic could not get a slot to depart in Accra in the evening and arrive in London Heathrow in the morning. And so most of the time, their business class seats are always empty because business class travelers would always want to depart in the evening and arrive in the morning and walk straight into their meetings. And so at this time, we hope that British Airport Authorities and Ghana Civil Aviation Authority will give Virgin Atlantic the opportunity to be able to depart Accra in the evening and arrive Heathrow in the morning. Once they do that, that's where they'll be able to compete with British Airways on the Accra London or Accra Gatwick route. And I think that government has the role also to ensure that there is competition in the market. Right. I mean, the prices we pay to travel across Ghana and most African countries is prohibitive because there's no much competition on the route. Most of these routes are dominated by these European and American carriers. And so to be able to break these dominance and monopoly, what government can do is that government can allow, let's say, Ethiopian Airlines to fly from Accra to most of these cities where airfare are high. Once you allow a player to join the market, that alone puts a competitive pressure on the dominant player, and then the prices will start to go down.
All right. Finally, I want to get an update on the efforts by CATS International to get the Consumer Protection Bill passed. I know you have a major press conference tomorrow.
Yes. As you know, for 19 years since Ghana started the Consumer Protection Bill, the bill has gathered dust at the Ministry of Trade for 19 years, and there has not been any attempt to take it to Parliament. So tomorrow, CATS and Consumer Protection Agency, that is Kofi Kapito and Imani, we're having a press conference tomorrow to let the government, especially Ministry of Trade, to know that Ghanaians cannot wait for another 4 years to allow this consumer protection law to be passed. In the absence of this law, Ghanaian consumers' rights are violated at whim and will. And we asked the president, because in 2016, it was part of NPP's political manifesto to ensure that to facilitate the passage of the Consumer Protection Bill. For almost 7 years down the line, the bill is still lying at the Ministry of Trade. And I think that government needs to put pressure on the Ministry of Trade to make sure that the bill gets to Parliament as soon as possible.
All right, we'll follow that and hopefully have a conversation about it when that press conference gets underway tomorrow. Thank you so much, Apia Kusiadumako. He is Regional Director, CAS International. Appreciate your time on the marketplace. Finally, the Africa Center for Entrepreneurship and Youth Empowerment is making a strong case for government to cut by half the tax burden on small-scale and medium enterprises. In its latest Entrepreneurship Freedom Index, the center has carried out a region-by-region assessment of challenges entrepreneurs face across the country as they make recommendations to tackle the emerging challenges. Emmanuel Akwa is Chief Executive.
The other, we are all affected by taxes, whether directly or indirectly. So for us, what we are looking at achieving be that government should cut down on, taxes
for SMEs.
For SMEs. Because, it's very difficult. The first 5 years is a survival stage. So if at a survival stage, and there is that notion that we're entrepreneurs, once you're an entrepreneur, you have lots of money. And institutions are overly extractive. You're not thinking about, okay, what can we do to help the entrepreneurs actually grow? I'm waiting for a day where we would have institutions that would say, look, we have been taking, for example, GRA, we have been taking taxes for you for some time now. Now we want to have a dialogue with you. Let's see how these taxes actually impact your businesses adversely and what we can do. Once we get to that point, I think the society that we are building is just, having overly extractive institutions.
Well, that's the marketplace. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com. Quality of fuel, #1 preference for consumers, COPEC. Also, Cedi depreciation to slow down this week as demand pressure subsides. myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Darryl Kwan. Thanks for watching. We will be back same time tomorrow.